Hey bitches, welcome back to episode 3 of And World Peace. Today I am so excited to finally introduce our first guest on the show. Her name is Gia, and she is one of my nearest and dearest friends from the pageant world. Before we get into today's episode, though, I do want to issue a trigger warning. This episode contains mentions of eating disorders, so please take good care should you choose to listen. And if you do choose to listen, we will link some resources that are in the show notes for you or anyone you may know. So a little bit about Gia. Gia is a 26-year-old retired pageant girly who still works with her platform of eating disorder awareness in her personal life, but also in her professional life. And like most women who are leaving the pageant world, she walks away with equal parts skill set and hardship from the organization she was involved in. Gia now works as an athletic trainer for a Division I college and is working at growing her small business, the Body Acceptance Project, which I will link information for in the show notes. We are super excited to have Gia on the show today, so let's get into it. Let's talk some shit. I can't wait. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Okay, so first I want to talk about, obviously, your involvement in pageants, and you, like myself, were involved in pageants for over a decade?
A little under, so like 8 years.
Okay, yeah. So, I think we should start there and start with like how you got into pageantry and kind of where you left your relationship with pageantry.
Yeah.
And the nitty-gritty after that.
It's so funny. I was just thinking about this today because some girls that I competed with like locally in Illinois. So I started competing in Illinois, then competed in Iowa because I went to the University of Iowa. But I saw someone who like retired from her pageant career, decide to re-enter and won an Illinois local and is going to Miss Illinois. And there was a part of me that like in my mind, I was like, do I miss it? I know. And then I'm like, what the fuck? But yeah, so I started in 2015, really small local, my hometown, just did it for the scholarship money, got first runner up, really loved it, came back the next year and I won. And then the rest from there, I went to school at Iowa and started in the Miss Iowa organization, in the Miss America organization. That's how I met Maggie. That's how I met a lot of, honestly, like my friends in Iowa, not having growing up there. So I feel like that's really why I stayed. And the obvious of like wanting to be Miss Iowa. So fast forward being in that organization specifically in Iowa for like 4 or 5 years, I want to say.
Yeah.
COVID year.
Yeah.
COVID year really extended it. So essentially my very last year, I was the reigning title holder for 2 full years, 2020 to 2022. 2022 is my last year. Yeah. Was like fully convinced, and it doesn't help when people around you tell you like you're going to be the winner. So fully fucking convinced myself in my head that I was going to win. I, at the time, had a job offer at Auburn to work in their sports medicine department. My dream job of working with women's gymnastic, who currently had a Olympian, Suni Lee, on their team. And I told them that I potentially was going to defer my offer to compete in a pageant that I didn't fucking know the outcome. Yeah, that was Delulu that I did that. Now looking back. But yeah, I wasn't even fucking close to winning that year. Did not even make up.
I remember seeing the results from that year being like these judges were smoking literal crack cocaine, like in a way that I mean, and that's how it goes, right? In pageantry is like different. The old adage is like different day, different panel, different,
Yep.
but it's like, I don't know. There's sort of something that like at the end of the day, like there's something wrong with that.
And like truly, you asked like how did your time leave? Like the only reason I would go back would be to like kind of rewrite how I left the organization, because I left with such a bitter taste in my mouth. Like I left my interview and I knew I did not win. I wasn't even fucking close. Like I knew interview was what set me apart, and the better half, like probably like 7 of the 10 minutes was spent asking me current events questions, which is everything I fucking hate about the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was thinking about today of like, gosh, would I go back and thinking about everything that's happening like in our society today? Like you think about like everything right now with Israel and like to ask someone a question about our current state of affairs, like, I would love every judge to have to do, like, some type of implicit bias test because I am very liberal and was definitely interviewing on a conservative panel. So the questions that they ask me range from my stance on vaccines, if I'm pro-choice or pro-life, if I'm like a supporter of those who are gay or transgender having children. Like they weren't light topics
Wild.
by any means, and I left just feeling like they had no idea any of the work that I've done for 8 years, which I like
Right.
argue I've really done a lot. And still now, like in my personal life, I work with my social impact is what they call it now. But yeah, I left with like a super bitter taste in my mouth because I think that is when I really left feeling like this is such a subjective opinion of 5 people who just have these like they have norms in their head and they have these biases, and that's just how the picture that they painted of me. Like no matter what I did, that's how that panel of judges were going to see me.
Right. And like, it's interesting you bring that up too, because so much of being in pageants is, especially if you are somebody who has like liberal beliefs and you're competing in a statistically conservative state. I think like one of the biggest things that I walked away from pageantry being like, wow, that was fucked up, was the fact that like, even though I was interviewing definitely liberal, like I sounded liberal, I
Yeah.
was still really reeling it in,
Yeah.
for those panels. Like, so,
Yeah.
they'd be like, it's like you're almost always trying to be moderate because
Yeah.
you don't ever want to piss off either side,
Right.
which I think is one of the biggest like cruxes of competing in pageants is that you're like, there's sort of this like, oh, women have the ability to speak their minds, but then it's like you speak your mind and then you're not going to win
Yeah.
because, like, because you believe in abortion or something.
Right. 100%. And
And
the truth of it was like very evidently clear when I left is, for those who aren't like have not competed in pageants, surely more people listening to this have, but the judges are not supposed to speak to you before. They're definitely not supposed to speak to you after, win or lose. Like they're not supposed to approach you. And I remember, I think it was, gosh, Maggie Leach. Was that the teen Miss Iowa? Is that her name?
yes, yeah.
She won teen Iowa that year. So she had been crowned the night before. And that year, Grace Keller had won.
Oh,
And everyone was in the lobby, at Miss Iowa, they do this like grand entrance. And I was sobbing, like just like hysterically crying. Like I couldn't even control it. I was such a sore fucking loser. And
same though.
it's because I just did not see it coming. Like
Yeah.
I knew sure as shit that I was going to win.
Mhm.
And I remember Maggie came up to me and she said, there's a judge waiting for you in the parking lot that wants to speak to you.
Pretty
So like you
deal.
yeah, like you go through this like dungeon to get out of the theater into this like pitch black dark parking lot and she's just waiting for me. The one of the only women, if not there were two, but a woman and black. She was the only person of color on the judges panel that year. And she told me that she was sorry I didn't win and she had me picked as the winner from the beginning. And that I appreciate, but also I was like, that fucking sucks because
100%.
like that didn't make me feel any which better. I mean, at least I feel validated that like I didn't absolutely shit the bed here and like someone saw what I did. But I think that was very telling that the most what I would argue, outward looking in, not knowing much about her background, the most diverse person on the panel
Mhm.
selected me.
And she was probably like, I mean, I'm speculating here. She may or may, because I know exactly who you're talking about from the panel, she may
Yeah.
or may not have been the head judge as well.
Yeah.
And it's criminal when that happened to me in 2018 when I was first runner up, that I remember the head judge came up to me and it was very public. Like he came up to me on the stage at the Adler when we were taking photos.
Wow.
And he said to me, he was like, I swore it was going to be you. And you're like, you can't just say that, dude.
Yeah.
That's not how this works.
That's
Like,
not how that works.
give my ass on stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So I definitely left with like such a bitter taste in my mouth. But like fast forward, 3 or 4 years, I think the things that I took away from it that like no one can take away from me is the public speaking abilities, like the interviewing abilities, like interviewing at my job. Now I work at Northwestern University in athletics. One of the youngest people within my department. Like I remember my supervisor now, then the hiring manager asked me at the end of my interview, it was like an 8 to 5 p.m. all day interview. He was like, "You seem like you have it all together. Like, I must be missing something. Like, you nailed all of this."
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I'm like, "I don't know what the fuck I'm doing in my job still, but I know that can interview, like, literally interview with any singular person. Like, no one scares me to interview with me anymore,
Right.
like,
Exactly.
at all. When someone's asking, like, my current stance on the state of Russia, like, my thoughts on our current vaccination policy, like, literally not one question in any other interview is gonna stump me from there."
Exactly. Yeah. I just told my mom that the other day, how I feel like I, solely because of the interview skills I have from pageants, I could interview for any job and it could be like totally out of my fucking pay grade. It could be like
Yeah.
an electrical engineering position. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking crush it. Like, no
Yeah.
worries. Like,
Yeah.
so
100%.
um I want to talk about, I don't want to skip over this while we're talking about kind of like pros and cons of pageantry. So you had a platform that was very deeply personal to you and something that you still advocate for and still do a lot of, advocacy work, and you do a lot of fundraising. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like to put essentially your trauma on a pedestal for judges to sort of like look at and dissect?
Yeah. I always had such, like, a hard time with this is the aspect that I, like, had the hardest time with pageants, that I felt like it's really hard to talk about your traumas eloquently and doing it in a way that isn't, like, self-loathing, doing it truly for yourself, and not like you're saying you're doing it for other people, but some people truly come off as if they're doing it to heal themselves. And I think that's the issue that I've always had, um, is that some people bring out such raw traumas that it's clearly they're not ready to talk about and should not be helping other people yet. And I felt like it was something that I had done so much self-work on. I mean, I've been with the same therapist that I was with in treatment. I've been with her for 12 years. Like, it's something that I've truly had to work at myself to be able to want to help people. So I advocate for eating disorder awareness and education and prevention. And it's something that I still work with, not having been in the system for 3 years. I still have a small business. My job specifically, I'm an athletic trainer, but I work with athletes who have disordered eating, or we call it relative energy deficiency in sports. So it's still like an active part of my every single day. Like, I still work with referring athletes to disordered eating, higher levels of care and things like that. So at the time, I think I felt like I was doing a really good job at advocating. Now I look back and I'm like, I wasn't doing what I should have been doing, because it was hard to advocate for that, but also be in an organization where you felt you had to look a certain way and be a certain way and act a certain way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I will say, like, while it was a hard decision then, I'm really proud of the fact that the year that I relapsed, the only time I've had a relapse was in 2019, and I was a title holder, and I decided to resign and step down because I knew that it wouldn't be right for me to go to, the state stage and advocate for something that I knew I wasn't doing. Like, everything that I was saying, I was behind closed doors doing the opposite. Um, so I felt like I was doing such a good job then. Now I look back and realize I was doing an absolute awful job, and it wasn't the time for I wouldn't say awful, but it was
Yeah, you were doing
the
the best you
timing,
can.
yeah, the best I could. But that to me has always been like a more interesting part of the Miss America organization, of like, how does one advocate for something eloquently that is truly like traumatic in their life?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's sort of like, how are you, well, and you're so very obviously being judged on it, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's something that like you you bring this really traumatic experience to the table, and it better not have any kind of like, it better not be rough around the edges, right? Like,
Yeah.
it better be in a pretty package
Right.
for anybody to consume, right? So it better be the youth. It better be like, you better have a plan when you're going into
Yeah.
elementary schools and high schools and, places like that. But then you also have to relate it to like elderly people, and, want somebody who can like relate it to everybody. And the thing is that like, you know, e- eating disorders or sexual violence or things like that, you can't possibly package that in a way that is a one size fits all situation. You cannot possibly package it to where there's no roughness in the story.
Right.
And even if you try, I think, to say, oh, this is rough around the edges, and I know that, and I'm rough around the edges, and I love myself, and I'm healing, and that,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
whatever. It's like there's still always going to be some judge somewhere who's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
nope, not for me.
Right.
And that's the bitch of it, right? Is that like you put yourself out there in this very outward way, and it isn't going to be for everybody,
Right.
regardless of what the topic is that you're talking about.
Right. No, I agree. And I think like the aspect of the judges being random, there were times where like I wish it was someone who actually was pretty close to this organization or at least followed the organization
Yeah.
because there are plenty of people who I know who have won either a local title or even a state title and have been an absolute shit person behind closed doors, but definitely did not do what they were advocating for. Like
One,
some of them are the exact opposite of what they said they were doing. And I think that was what I struggled with the most leaving is like I knew I cared and I think it shows because I still work in it every single day in my personal and professional life. But I knew some people just didn't give a shit. And it's like,
mm,
isn't that what they say the whole organization is about now, right? Like they try to take away what they felt was like objectifying women. They took out the swimsuit. They added more conversation on stage so you can see who that person was. But it's like there's a lot of people who know how to smart the system and just talk out of their asshole. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I would say like most people in this
Right.
know how to talk out of their asshole. That it's, yeah, I mean, and it's sort of, we all have known, every single woman who has participated in a pageant in her life has known another person who has won and is a huge fucking bully behind
Yes.
closed doors, and then also has a platform on anti-bullying. Like there is one of those everywhere. And
100%.
that's like that's just the total bitch of the entire situation, is that you want so badly to participate in an organization that stands behind supporting women,
Right.
and but then it's like what happens behind closed doors, so it's hard to look
Right.
away from
Right.
that aspect of it.
Right, and
Um,
looking back, like, you see girls who have the same platform, right? Like, there are multiple girls who advocated for disordered eating. There's most people who advocated for just the same topic, and it's like, how do I make my trauma more interesting than hers? Like, how do I make my story a little bit more digestible for your palate? You know what I mean?
yeah, totally. Yeah, or what kind of healing have I done that's different from this person's
Hers.
healing? And yeah, and how have I implemented a different thing into my platform that's cooler and better and more shiny, and I've talked to this governor and that
Yeah,
and gone to DC and done like I work with these national organizations. It's just fucking insane. It's truly the concept of putting your trauma that to your point can be so fresh and so new
yeah,
out there for everybody to essentially judge and dissect under their own little microscopes with their own biases and all of that.
yep,
That has always been, for me, looking back, the biggest problem I think that I have with the organization. I mean, there are plenty, we all know that, um, but I think that's been the biggest issue I've seen in kind of having the separation from the organization.
yeah,
Um, so I want to talk a little bit about your healing and your eating disorder, and I want to talk a little bit about kind of what that looked like while you were in pageants, and then talking about how that sort of has transpired now that you are out of pageants and you have some distance from all of that, specifically the swimsuit portion of the competition.
gosh, yeah. I mean, I think the timing that I was competing in the Miss America organization was also college, and there was just so much eating disorder culture in college. Also, like, not in the healthiest of relationships. I was, like, strongly, like, what's the right word to say? Like, vastly insecure. Like, I don't even know if there's a word to describe how insecure I was in
Well, you're
college.
dating a piece of shit.
Right. Cheating here and there, you know what I mean? It's weird. But I was so insecure in college that I think that I sometimes utilize pageants to like help me put on this face that like, no, I'm confident and I have it all together, even though it was evidently clear to, girls who knew me because of who I was dating that I was insecure. Those guys' friends who it was very clear I was insecure. Like I think I was just trying to make up for that. But obviously being recovered from an eating disorder and being in college can be hard for a number of reasons. Um, just like, the culture that is college, going out and drinking, the weight you might gain, like the freshman 15 is definitely something I had trying to lose all of that in college. The culture of I want to get more drunk, so I'm not going to eat anything for dinner. I want to fit into this outfit that I bought, so I'm not going to eat my meal today. Like I definitely did all of that in college. So yeah, very much did all of the things in college that surely a lot of women do. Like no matter what year you graduated from college, it's around no matter what. It's still happening. Um, as I graduated college, became in a much more healthy relationship. But definitely was still, I say that now looking back though, I was at a weight that was like my normalcy. Like I always weighed that number. I was always at pant size. I was always at shirt size. Like everything in my life was pretty constant. Now as I've gotten older, like my body has gone through changes. I went off of birth control for a few months, went back on it, had a huge change in my weight, one that's very uncontrollable. And so it's ironic you asked because now I'm doing work on my eating disorder that I haven't had to do like in 6 years because it's almost harder now not listening to the voice and knowing that like that's just not the path that I'm going to go down, but then having to still sit in this body, sit in these clothes. So my evolution in terms of what my recovery has looked like has changed. It should.
Mhm.
That's what recovery is. You don't just take medication and it goes away.
Right.
But I think something that like I'm battling now, like you feel the same when you advocate for something, you feel like you can't really slip up on it.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people like aren't looking to me for that exactly, but knowing I've created a small business, I have a podcast that discusses this. Like my athletes listen to it and look at that for support. I feel like I can't talk about wanting to lose weight because it's like taboo for someone who's experienced anorexia, was bulimic to then say like, "Oh, I want to lose weight later in life." So yeah, I mean, I think that's what I'm navigating now, especially like as my health has changed. I think especially with the birth control, it took such a huge toll on my body that like I just wasn't expecting
Mhm.
and like completely uncontrollable, right? Like that's all hormonal weight that's so much out of one's control. And that's all that I've worked on in therapy for the last 12 years is things that are out of my control and how to manage that.
Mhm.
Much easier to do when you actually like the clothes that you're in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting you say that, like, the aspect of you feel like you can't say that you want to lose weight or, be in a smaller body, and it's interesting because I think regardless of what somebody has been through, like, everybody should get the chance to feel confident in their skin,
Yeah.
regardless of what that looks like, and there is such this, like I would love to, like, get your input on this as well. There's such a push right now for not really I don't wanna say a push, that's maybe a bad word, but there is such a strong just leaning towards this, like, body positivity movement,
No.
right? Which is, like includes, but is not limited to sort of this, like, body neutrality
Yeah.
idea, and I understand that that idea is geared towards, looking around you and being neutral about other people's bodies, and for myself, and I'm sure you can relate to this, when you are recovering from an eating disorder, it's so easy to look at other people and think, of course I'm neutral about their body because it's not
Right.
like I don't have
Right.
fat in it. But then looking at your own body and being like, but how can I possibly be neutral about this skin that I'm in?
Right.
So I think it's fascinating that you bring that up. And I would love to know more about, if you sort of your subscription to that
Yeah.
trend of like that, or, I don't want to say trend, but I guess
Like
you know,
movement in that area. Yeah.
yeah, of body positivity and like body neutrality and just in owning your small business and in being somebody who people look to, if that's been challenging for you to step into like that headspace, or if you feel like that's been an easier part because it doesn't necessarily revolve all around you. It's around like other
Right.
people around you.
That's such a good point. I mean, my small business is called Body Acceptance Project, and I've always felt like I've personally aligned in the body acceptance category. Um, just because I felt like it was far more obtainable than like I don't think there's been a singular point in my life where I was truly body positive, and if I was probably doing it a little unhealthily,
Mhm.
which that probably says a lot about my recovery still. But I've always been one to align more with body acceptance because I feel like there are some days I can look in the mirror and just like I'm good. Like this is okay.
Right.
That fits good. She fits great.
Yeah.
But there are other days where I'm like, I'm going to avoid mirrors today and don't even let me fucking see a scale because I'll pass out. You know what I mean?
For
So
sure.
I feel like that is where I've always felt like I've landed. I don't think I've ever put myself in a category of body positivity, but I do understand that that might be like, I hate saying like that might be their journey, but that might be someone's journey to like stay in recovery.
Absolutely.
That they have to like maybe swing the pendulum a little bit
Mhm.
to force themselves almost like a fake it till you make it.
Mm.
I definitely had to do that early on in my recovery for sure.
Yeah,
I think to
absolutely.
stay in recovery, I've definitely had to be a lot more realistic. I think especially like as I've gotten older, I don't know if you ever feel this, but like it is an active worry. Like if I'm ever given the ability to have a child of like how my body's going to recover off of having a child. And like most people don't probably, well, I don't know, maybe women do have to consider that or do consider that. But someone who has recovered from an ED and like actively works on it throughout their entirety of their 20s and still has like that is a fear of having a child for
Mhm.
many reasons. I mean, childbirth is fucking terrifying, but like also just
Mhm.
weight that's truly uncontrollable to lose. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that's where I've always leaned, but I think that's probably going to evolve as I get older, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, as I approach maybe the time in my life where I will start to like explore having children, I think to
Yeah.
your point, that is one of the biggest things that I think about probably on a daily basis, which is again, probably says like more about my own recovery than anything. But
Yeah.
like it is such a real fear and a real
Yeah.
sort of headspace you can get into where you're constantly thinking, well, because, quote, bouncing back is shoved down our throats
Yeah.
every fucking day. So it's
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
bounce back from the mom bod or, whatever, or the, mommy sculpt or like I've seen in the last, week a
Yeah.
million different types of just shit out there that's like got us bounce back from, from doing this incredibly labor intensive
Yeah.
thing of
Yeah.
bringing a fucking person into the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's an excellent point that like I constantly revert back to that too, where I'm like, oh God, like, do I want to have a kid? Because
Yeah.
what's it going to do to my body? And like, how am I
Yeah.
going to deal with like the dysmorphia maybe that comes with, being pregnant and being in a larger body that I'm not used to.
Right.
So anyway, that's a fascinating point. I want to talk about your experience working in athletic training,
Yeah.
obviously, and how that has, um, you know, well, just generally speaking, like obviously it's a male dominated field. I want to know
Sure.
how, what that's been like for you. But I also want to know how that's impacted you from a recovery standpoint and how like, working with these athletes who may have some disordered eating issues has maybe improved or been hard on your recovery in some instances.
Yeah, 100%. I used to work with football in 2020. Since then, I've transitioned to working with only female sports, not because of a preference, but because those opportunities were the ones that were available. I did love working football. Um, did I feel like I was great at it? No, I knew I was good, but like I just knew that that wasn't going to be my lifelong job. For people who like don't know truly who athletic trainers are, what we do, we work in healthcare, we work in sports medicine, and we provide healthcare to mostly athletic teams, but you'll see them sometimes in hospitals, military setting, all of the above. But I work at a Division I collegiate college, and so with that, you work with athletes who are high intensity, like almost elite athletes who their schooling kind of relies on their participation and their success. And so that has always been, I think I had like an immense amount of imposter syndrome. Like I said, like I entered a job knowing I was the youngest. Like they joke that I'm the Gen Z of the office. Like I have like a bright ass pink keyboard and like just all of this like Gen Z like shit in my
Propaganda.
God, propaganda in my office. Uh, but they used to joke about it, but like now I think I've definitely had like more of a comfortability. But again, the skill set, like starting with what we talked about from the Miss America organization is what allowed me to get my foot in the door for them to actually see what I can do. Um, but working with a female team has been like honestly, the athletes are my favorite part of this job. Being able to see, like, their growth throughout college, like, they know they can come to me all the time when they have just, like, douchebag boy drama, other athlete drama, like, it's really cool to be a part of that experience with them because you also can see some of them going on a journey in terms of, like, body acceptance themselves and obviously maybe some of them going through ED treatment themselves, and so that's actively a part of my job of treating athletes who, I should say co-treating with other disciplines with a team physician, sports psychologist, dietitian, whatever other provider that we need to fill in there as well, but actively help treating them in that time. I think where I've struggled the most is, seeing these girls at a time that, like, is so monumental in their life, like, they are in the peak part of their career. They are at a borderline Ivy League college, like, definitely for the Big Ten, a very rigorous academic school, and potentially that having to be put on hold for treatment. I think I sometimes step a little bit too much into their world, like, my supervisor, who I, like, see as a mentor, always has to remind me that I have to, like, hold my patients out here and not close to my heart because I can't want it more than them, and I think that's been the hardest part for me that I've never felt this, like, inkling that I'm gonna relapse, but, like, truly taking my work home with me and, like, just wanting to be able to, like, I don't know, just share with them my experience and be like and some of them I have, I mean, some of them I've sat down with them and, I say, like, "Listen, my experience is not to which any degree that you are feeling right now, but I, like, get it." Because I
Mhm.
think with ED treatment, like, we say that resistance is normal, they should resist. If they're not, that's probably odd, but in full transparency, like, you fucking hate everyone around you. Like, people are telling you things to do that you don't wanna do at all,
Mhm.
things that are really scary, things that you have been doing for probably years that most people have not known what's happening behind closed doors. And now you kind of I don't know if secret's the right way to say that, but your secret's out there. And now all of these providers know they want their hand in it to be able to help you, all for good reason, now being on the other side of it. Um, but it's so scary. So I think that's where, like, it's been really awesome to see how, like, my advocacy work has shifted throughout the years, but, like, in a way that, like, I just wanna, like, take all of their cases home with me and hold them close to my heart. And at the end of the day, like, we know this to be true. If someone doesn't wanna get better, they're not gonna. Like, that's
Right.
and I've been in that place. You've probably been in that place of, like, "No, I know what's right and wrong, and I don't wanna do what's right now." Like, what doing wrong feels good right now, um,
No.
and it's really hard for me to be like to just not be like, "Yeah, and I fucking get it, like, totally." But I
Yeah.
can't do that, right? In my role, I have to be, like, their their provider. I have to be really professional in that manner when I wanna be like, "I get it."
Right. Yeah, there's such an aspect too of, to your point, like when you're in recovery of, like, you hate everybody around you, but you hate yourself more.
Yeah,
And so it's the self-hatred I think that you experience when having an ED is probably in my opinion, is the saddest part of, like,
like
the entire experience, right? Is that, like, there's no there is no compassion for self, there is no empathy for self, there is no, like, "Hey, I see you, I see what you've been through, I understand how we got here." There is none of that. So it's very hard for, I think, people to grasp, like, if you've never been in that spot of just, like,
Mhm.
such deep self-loathing, how it can really impact the way you view other people too. So, like, you would
100%.
view somebody as wanting to help as, like, a threat to your existence because, like,
Yeah,
if you get better, then who are you once you're better?
right,
So, it's like the paradox of, like, of healing. Is that, well, who am I gonna become once I don't have my bullshit and don't have
right,
trauma? So,
right, 100%. I say, like, the verbiage I use with them is, "You have an eating disorder, you aren't an eating disorder," and it so much becomes your identity that
mhm.
once you don't have it anymore, there is, like, a sense of, like, "Well, who am I?" Like, that was a
Yeah.
big part of my life, and I
What it
think, like, I
yeah.
can speak for myself, the bouts in my life where things have been out of my control have been the times when I wanted to restrict because that was the aspect of my life that I could control. So, in a way, it's like this self-inflicted harm that is like, I can't control any of this bullshit that's happening around me, but I
Right.
can control this, and I can just make this a little bit harder on myself, like, because I can control it.
Right, exactly. You said that control is, like, the biggest aspect of this, which we know to be
Right.
true about anything with regarding eating and food exercise. Um, and I feel like, I've experienced a lot of issues myself with control, and it has manifested in various different ways, be it through an eating disorder as well. But I want to know what control now looks like for you and how you've learned to kind of wrestle with not having it.
Yeah. It's honestly, I think I'm more aware of it than I've ever been living with my boyfriend who like just truly like raw dog's life. Like he doesn't need any SSRI to function. Like he doesn't have a singular worry in his
Couldn't
day.
be me.
Like I just increased my sertraline. Like I just,
Hell
I'm
yeah, girl.
aware of it because like I think in such a healthy way, he's able to like name it and say what's like a little bit ridiculous that I can't let go of and like what's rational. Um, and I think like that has been really healthy for me. And I hated it at first because I'm like, what the fuck do you know? Like this man has never had a singular
Loser.
trauma in his life. Like I like, and it's funny, but it is true. Like I've talked about it in therapy that like he's never lost someone close in his life. He's never had like a major event in his life that's taken place where like he's had to, you know, a traumatic event for like a lack of a better way to say it. And so I think I've leaned on that almost of like, okay, well, that's why I am the way that I am, but that is definitely not a healthy way to see it, obviously, as I've much understood living with Jeremy. But it definitely looks a lot different now having a partner who's just so mentally healthy. It's such a
Yeah,
nice balance.
it's so wild, right? Like
It's so wild.
I think there's a lot about Ty because like he had like it's kind of the flip side of the coin. He has been through a bunch of traumatic shit and he
Yeah.
still doesn't need to be medicated. I'm just like, damn, what is that like to just be so like to truly just raw dog
Yeah.
everything that you're doing like on
Yeah.
a daily basis. Like I wish that I had that kind of like freedom and agility to just to really just send it, but I don't.
Mental
So,
agility. I don't have
yeah,
that.
mental agility.
Yeah,
Don't.
it's funny. You said it in your first podcast that Zoloft are for people with family trauma, and I'm like, ding, 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 ding.
It's so like that kind of string of me talking about those medications. I should have included this at the end that like I've been on literally all of them. So like
Yeah,
that is, I guess the joke of it is that like I have every issue that I listed out there and like
yeah.
including the familial trauma. So um amazing. So I know that we've been chit-chatting for a while, so I want to be mindful of your time, but I want to talk too a little bit about kind of circling. I just want to double down on the pageants.
Hold
Let's
down.
just really double down, double
Yeah.
click, double down. We're gonna do that. I want to know sort of your stance on them now. And if you are in support of them, if you are against them, what your vibe is that you're taking from the changes that have been made in the last 5 years within either Miss America, Miss USA, like you can speak to whatever organization you want, or just generally. But I would just love to know, sort of on the outside now, where you are at.
Yeah, I mean it's been what feels like such a long time being away from them that like I just feel like I'm neutral. Like I
Mhm.
don't keep up with a lot of the changes. I think when they raise the age when you could retire, I think 28 is when you age out. It used to be like 24, then it was 26, now it's 28. It's
Jesus
probably gonna go
fuck.
to 30. Like who fucking knows? But I think I've become neutral on it because like again, to like the things that I've taken away, like I took away like a minuscule amount of money to pay for school, which was great. And I took away a lot of public speaking skills. And like I think for my job, it's actually really helped me. Um, having like athletes come to me that want a decision now and having coaches coming to me that need an answer right away. I've
Mhm.
learned how to like eloquently talk out of my ass in a good way. And so
For
I
sure.
can't like negate all of the good that has come out of it. And I think a lot of my in a way like my personality and the way that I hold myself is a product of being a part of them. Um but I struggle because when they raise the age, I'm like, could I do it? Could I try again?
Right.
But everything that I didn't like about it is still there. And so I think because of that, I don't know if I could return. Like a base of that pageant is being able to represent who you are and your opinions in in organized fashion with like a pretty little bow on it. And I don't think that tells you anything about the leader that individual is going to be.
Yeah.
Which obviously like that's how like the specific thing I don't like because that's what I left hating.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know. At the end of the day, like thinking back to like how we talked about, your platform and your trauma, like for someone to just put a literal number on that, like an exact scoring on that is
Right.
just like now being out of it is so hard to digest. And like last, you said it in your first podcast, there are women who are putting down women in that organization. Like
Oh yeah.
you'd be lying if you said that you wanted the girl next to you to win. Like there
100%.
are girls I was actively not rooting for, like
Yeah.
100%. Like
Fuck yeah, there were.
like actively girls where I'm like, I hope that you fucking lose or you trip, like one of the two. And I think for that reason, it's not for me. But I've also learned how to gracefully lose. And I think while
Mhm.
I would still argue that I'm not a great loser, any loss that has come since them has been a little bit easier.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
having to lose like so publicly and like still have a smile on your face and like someone's quite literally like capturing a picture of you has made like so much loss in life a little bit easier. But honestly, I don't really know where I stand. I think it's going to continue to change. Like
Yeah.
that organization changes every fucking year. And what I
Hmm.
think they need is like a leader in the organization who's young and not over the age of 60 or 70, who's like competed in the industry in the last 10 years, who can like actually speak to what it's like being in
Yeah.
it within the last 10 years. Because I think the people that are in it are either far removed or I don't even know who runs it anymore. But um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. There are great things and there are really shitty things. And I don't think that either of those are going to change, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's such a good point. It is such a like, I don't know, it's super nuanced, right? Because it's you don't want to I found myself kind of grappling with this for the last 5 years that you never want to put down something, right? That like
Mhm.
shaped so much of who you are.
Right.
Like, I never want to tell people, well, I think pageants are total fucking garbage and they're the worst thing to ever exist ever on the face of the planet ever. Like,
Yeah.
I never want to be that extreme in what I think is wrong with them. However, I'm not I would be remiss to say that there are so many things that are deeply, deeply rooted in a lot of like misogyny and
Yeah.
patriarchal values and, things that I just don't agree with
Yeah.
and things that I just had no fucking idea when I was on the inside. It's like, it really is like when you get removed and when you're outside of it and you can kind of look in the rear view, I mean, obviously hindsight's 2020, but I look back and I'm like, holy shit, I didn't really realize that so much of that was so fucked up.
Truly.
I really did not have any idea. And I don't think that anybody has any idea until you're in it and
Yeah.
until you leave it.
Yeah.
And until you're removed from it enough to have perspective. Like, I'm not talking about the people who still volunteer heavily with the organization or things like that because you're still so committed to the involvement of being
Right.
involved in it that doesn't really afford you the option either to really have some perspective and to really look at it and be like, I totally see how this is like fucking with people and really like ruining the lives of like
Right.
several 100,000 women probably.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to just have that perspective now and to look back and be like, I totally understand the things that were right with it. And I totally, I mean, I probably would not have met you had I not
Right.
done pageants. And that's, such a gift to have such lovely friends who come from it. But it's also like those lovely friends and I all share the same trauma bond, which is that
Right.
like, we were fucked up by this
Yeah.
organization. Like, so you're like, okay, cool. So am I like trauma bonding with everybody?
Yeah.
Like, or like, what is this?
Right. 100%. I think like the scary, not, I don't know if scary is the right way to say it, but like I know people who have truly made pageants their identity and like in the
100%.
OG, Miss America organization, it was only your identity till you were about 24 because either you won at that point or you aged out. Like
Yeah.
now it affords
We're
people the
fucking hard.
opportunity to make it their life until they're 28 years old. And like
100%.
I
It's so
think that
weird.
it's so weird. And I think like I don't know if I would have grown so much in my life if I would have still been a part of it. Like it's definitely
Right.
gave me great opportunities nonetheless. But I would not be where I am in life. Like I think back of like if I would have won Miss Iowa that year, I would have never gone to Auburn and I would have never gotten my job back at Northwestern.
Yeah.
So if that would have complete and I would have taken a year off of practicing, like I probably wouldn't be an active athletic trainer at this current moment.
Hmm.
So it definitely would have halted my like professional goals in a way. And there are plenty of people who, win and it provides them a different opportunity. But I just knew that wasn't going to be what would have happened for me because where I
Right.
was going wasn't anywhere within the industry of what you see people in pageants go to thereafter. Like, you know,
Yeah.
journalism or, some form of public speaking and either as a news anchor or whatever it may be. Like, I just knew that I wasn't going to find something outside of it. Um, so I think to me that's the hardest thing that like I know women who have like competed since I started at the age of 18 and I'm like, you are 25.
Yeah, like it's time. Like
It's
let's hang up the gowns, my
like
sis.
right. And it's expensive as shit. Like
Yeah, it's
you'd
so
be
expensive.
lying to say that they don't judge you of who has the nicer fucking outfit up
Oh,
there.
1000%. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, um, it's a really classist like organization at the end of the day, when you look
Yeah.
at it from a, purely objective lens, like it is expensive to compete. And yes, there are people who are like, I wore a $15 fucking, meh, meh, meh." Like, I'm like,
Very meaty.
cool, good for fucking you. That is 1% of the population that
Yeah.
competes.
Yeah.
The other 99% are blowing their college funds to
Mm-hmm.
afford the next, Sherry Hill gown that comes
Yeah.
out, whatever.
Yep.
Like, I think to your point, you made a really excellent point here about how, um, like the opportunities that are afforded to women after pageants. And I want to double down on that because I feel like that's not a thing anymore. And
Yeah.
I feel like that was big back in the time of like maybe the years of like 2007 to 2017. Like I think
Yeah.
there was a very specific decade where Miss America was like this really cool, relevant, sort of leaning like feminist ish, in the eyes of like the public.
Right.
Um, and it was like the inception of social media, so it was
Right.
a great opportunity for the Savvy Shields of the world to go
Yeah.
out and win Miss America and be this super relatable Miss America, and then go and build a career on Instagram. So
Right.
it's like that, but that opportunity is just like not really there anymore, in at least
Yeah.
in my opinion. It's just it is a pretty dead, like no one's getting on Instagram and is like, gotta find Miss America right now. Like,
Yeah.
they're like,
Yeah.
they're not looking up Miss America, they're looking up Alex Earl. So it's like,
Right. Right. Right.
how,
Right.
like, there is no, not to mention like, I think it's pretty difficult to be a relatable title holder anymore because so much of the organization is rooted in kind of, well, yeah, rooted, meaning like back to its roots in misogyny, in, anti-feminist values, in the objectification of women,
Yeah.
in this kind of concept of like making you hate yourself till you are so perfect and polished that you are what they want. Um,
Right.
so anyway, I just thought that was an excellent point.
And like you can probably speak to the perfect and polished point. Like my mom asked me this past weekend, the only pageant that I would do again, I haven't competed in it, but the only pageant I would return for would be Miss Chicago because that like growing
Okay.
up, like that was the title that I like dreamed of having.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Would you do that this year?" And I was like, "I just got so used to not having to like put a bow on everything that I said and watched everything I posted on social media and like watch how many times I say fuck in public. Like
Yeah.
I got really used to not having to do that anymore. And like and my mom was like, "Really? You feel that way? Like you don't feel like your friends like could be themselves?" And I was like, "No, I feel like Maggie on," and I said you specifically. I'm like, Maggie on stage was very polished, but she swore like a sailor as soon as we were backstage. Like I like gave
100%.
like you would like walk on
Yeah.
stage for a swimsuit, like just absolute glistening abs and walk off, and you'd be like, thank fucking God that's over. And I was like,
I mean,
we've always been like the same. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I just think
yeah.
like we very much like had to like hide that part, not hide, but like, it's deemed like classless and not having,
Well, you shut it off.
manners.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
we
exactly.
at Miss
Yeah.
Iowa that year, the last year we competed together, we had to take a an etiquette class. And we
Forgot
damn near got kicked out of that etiquette class. Like
I totally forgot about that.
like everything about that aspect is like what I just truly don't miss. That I can just
Yeah.
like be who I want. And it's not to say that you can't, but like you do have to be the most polished version of yourself. Like, and that's what you
Mhm.
sign up for. You go into it knowing that, you know that that's your job. Like, you know that you are going out there to be a representative. Like, that is what you are doing. So you have to make sure, like any representative in any field, they have to be on their game. And
Yep.
like, that's just like
Yeah.
what I don't miss at all. Like, surely you could attest to that.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I think a big part of like why I started this show and why I started anything that, in the last, couple of years, so much of it was like an undoing, a very conscious like undoing of the shit that I learned
Yeah.
to filter and kind of dim down because somebody else didn't appreciate it or thought it was classless or not not ladylike or whatever
Yeah.
the fuck.
Not
And
ladylike. Yeah.
yeah, and I read this book called Word Slut, and it's such a great book, but it talks about kind of like how um patriarchal values are sort of embedded in our language and how like
Hmm.
we are taught not to swear and like this
Yeah.
and swearing is deemed bad and like if you swear then you are a bad person and if you swear then you're like a piece of shit
Yeah.
and like you're this like just literal dog turd on the
Yeah.
sidewalk like if you say fuck in public. And I just was like, yeah, I mean, I just totally reject all of that. Like
Yeah.
I don't understand why it can't be both. I don't understand why I can't be incredibly articulate and incredibly intelligent and also say the word fuck.
Yeah.
I don't understand why men can go into a conference room
Yeah.
and throw shit and ass and fuck and all of this around and no one blinks. But a
Yeah.
woman does that and she's deemed this like, big thumpy Helga of the,
Yeah.
of the group. Like it's
Not thumpy.
I don't even know what that word means. But like I like you're just deemed like this different person if you
Yeah.
do what a man does. And it's
Right.
like for me, I just was like, no, that's like that's what this is like a very conscious rejection of all of that because it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And yeah,
No, I agree. And like, I don't think I like fully answered this part when you asked it, but like working in a male dominated field, like
yeah,
I feel like in a diverse setting with like diversity in gender and like ethnicity and like how one identifies, either that be like sexual orientation, whatever it may be. And I feel like that to me, like, to put a pretty bow on it, like I felt like I never really got to make the impact that I really wanted to in the Miss America organization. And I feel like I'm able to do that by job.
yeah,
And I think like to that point, like I wanted to put a pretty bow on everything I said to my athletes in that first year that I started my job. Now in the second year, I'm like very transparent, very honest. Like I swear all the time. Like
yeah,
that's just who I am. And I think those are also the people that I work with because I don't know. You have to show that you're also a person, you also have a life, and like those
yeah,
are the skills
for
that I
sure.
definitely took away from the Miss America organization, that like I didn't get to impact people's lives the way that I wanted to, because at the end of the day, that's what I wanted to do. Like women who I've seen that have become title holders who have said like I'm going to make a difference, and I'm like, you're just full of bullshit. Like, you know that
And
you
then they go to
wanted
like
this.
one Hy-Vee brat stand
Yeah.
and like, cool, amazing. Like,
Like
great work.
one gas station ribbon cutting, and they're like, I did it.
I made
Like,
my impact. I did.
like I just wanted free fucking gas. Like that's why they're like I
Screaming because y'all don't pay me dick shit to be a
literally,
title holder.
literally. But like I just like I like can genuinely say that like I wanted to be able to make a difference in like specifically college age women's lives who
Mhm.
like were trying to get out of that like ED culture in college, and I feel like I can actively do that in my job. And that's where I feel like I'm, if I would have stayed in pageants, I don't think I would have been able to do that. And like
Yeah.
that is the beauty of like someone who wasn't deemed in my eyes like successful in the organization, but
Mhm.
has had a plethora of what I feel like success coming out of it.
Like
But
truly means, yeah.
yeah, and like, but like again, to your point, you have to leave the organization to know that. Like you have to leave
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
And it becomes really difficult when people become rooted in it. So we've learned
Yeah.
good things, but like I would
Yeah.
never go back and say like that's what I wanted to do with my life, because no one
Yeah.
has ever said my job is to be Miss Iowa, like for the
100%.
entirety
Yeah.
of their life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it becomes so ingrained in your identity that it's like I mean, and that's, I think exactly how you and I kind of operated when we left the system. Was it was like a total identity crisis for like,
Mm-hmm.
a year.
Oh
And
yeah.
then it's like you kind of start to like get your bearings and you're sort of like, and now I feel like we're both at a place where we're like, oh, okay, like I understand now that it was never about any of that. Like it was never about, the gown or the fucking swimsuit or even
No.
really like how you interviewed or like anything. It just was, it was all about what these five people
Mm-hmm.
thought of you on
Oh
one
yeah.
particular evening.
Yeah.
And that for me, like I can sleep well at night knowing that that's total fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
that I don't care about that anymore. Like,
100%. And like
so,
to anyone that has lost, and like there are more people that have lost than have won, right? So
correct.
like
Yeah.
it's completely normal to want to say like fuck you to the system. Like
Yeah,
that is
absolutely.
completely normal. Like we had to spend our entirety of the system losing gracefully. Like that does not mean you have to lose gracefully once you're done. Like it's
Yeah.
normal to not, like I could not watch a pageant for 2 years after. Like I did not want to know the winners. I didn't, it just made me mad. I'm like,
Yeah.
I beat that person. I beat that person. Like I would have won that year then. Like
Hmm.
it's okay to want to just absolutely move completely away from it and hate everything about it. But at some point, like you said, like you can circle back and be grateful for what you took away from it. But
Yeah.
you're better for it not being a part of it anymore, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. That's amazing. Okay, I want to get into the topic of the show. We're going to get into what is called World War or World Peace. And you're going to tell me if you think that these items constitute World War or World Peace. Okay.
You're like,
Well.
literally, fuck me.
All right. So, couples who get engaged at Disney World.
I just had this conversation with someone
Yes.
that Disney adults scare me.
They scare
I
the shit out of me,
scare
too.
the shit out of me. What are you doing? My best friend, like my lifelong best friend, who's like my sister, was like disinvited from a wedding. Like, obviously, this girl was like a little delulu, and she decided to go from having her wedding in Illinois to having a small select group of people get married at Disney. The starting rate at getting married at, she got engaged at Disney, let alone she
Sick.
wants to get married at Disney. The starting rate is like $30,000. I mean, I
I,
don't care if I offend you if you are a Disney adult. I hope I
I
do.
don't care either. I literally couldn't give a fuck. They really do be scaring me anytime.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's like there's something so visceral about Jesus. Can I talk about the ears? Like for me, the ears are so scary. Like
The matching shirts that I know they made with their Cricut machine before they left that trip. That if they washed that night, it would peel.
it would crumble. Not the
The
cricket.
Cricut shirts might be up there, like worse than the trip itself.
I'm screaming.
Like I can't even. I'm just not talking there.
Okay, amazing. Okay, so Crocs just released the announced that they're releasing cowboy boots. Have you seen them?
No, wait. I need to
Okay, I need you to pull up your phone right now and look at the Crocs that are
look
there.
at my phone.
So we're giving Disney adults who get engaged there World War
Well,
for
yeah,
sure. Okay.
100%.
One hundo. Okay, I gotta know your opinion on these Crocs then. So they're a Croc cowboy boot, and I believe they've got all the fixins of a normal cowboy boot, but they are Crocs on the bottom. Did you find
Oh,
it? It's
what is that thing called in the back that spins?
it's like spurs. They're so fucking foul.
So, but it's like intentionally foul. Like, you know?
Crocs, literally, like, here's my thing about Crocs right now is that like they know what they're doing, right? Like
Yeah.
they know that everything they're putting out, the platform Crocs. Oh
Yeah.
my God, the platform Crocs. Crocs knows like they know what they're doing and their demographic is so specific and so niche. Like their demographic is like just the worst person you've ever met.
It's
Ever.
like so tacky that it's like kind of in. Like, you
Right,
know,
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
I
exactly. I think if you're under the age of I think let me rephrase that. I think if you're over the age of 9,
Yeah,
I will judge you for wearing a
100%.
croc for
It
sure.
is it is world peace if I saw like just like a little fella in one of those, like a little 3 or 4 year old, like
In the croc cowboy boots.
yeah, with his little spurs, like I would just want to fuck him. But like if it was like someone like that was like mid 20s,
Like a whole adult.
like a full adult, absolute criminal, jail.
Jail. Going to jail.
These are
Amazing.
nuts. Okay, these are pretty fucking funny.
They're hilarious. I just think of like the one like inanimate, well, animated thing, but it's not a real thing that I think of wearing those is SpongeBob. I don't know why that's the first thing that comes to mind. Like that is something SpongeBob would put on.
Yeah,
And I don't know why that is why my brain entered that realm, but that's where it went.
that looks like something. What was the episode like the Rusty Spittoon?
The where he pulls out the guns.
That is exactly what they would wear in that episode.
Amazing. Okay, so I didn't keep up with this. This is the last thing on my list, but people who sell essential oils.
Okay, I I know you used to be in your essential oil game.
I was an essential oil girly. Fun fact,
Yeah.
I am not really any, I mean I use them, but I don't sell them.
Yeah. You know
I'm not like
what?
a distributor.
This is an unpopular opinion, but I'm gonna say world peace because like get your bag, but I'm judging you hardcore. Like I'm not gonna buy anything that you're selling, but like if it's working for you, it's
Like
working
go
for you.
off, girl. Then it's
Yeah.
working for
Yeah,
you.
like I'll buy one or two from TJ Maxx, but I'm not gonna make my whole ass career out of it.
It's like I was a distributor back in the day, way back in the day for doTERRA. And doTERRA was like, I will say, they have this one product. It's not even, I wonder if it's in my office. I don't think it is. It's not even a essential oil, but it's like, I think it has essential oils as the base of it. And it's like
Okay.
this muscle rub product. And I have
Oh,
yet
okay.
to find anything like it on the market. And that is the one thing that like I buy it at my chiropractor. I hope she makes money off of it. Congratulations. But other than that, like this essential oil on my desk right here, this is from Dollar General, I believe. It's sweet orange. So
You
yeah,
are a consumer.
I am a consumer. I am the target audience.
You are the target audience. I mean, in this economy, get your bag. Like, I understand if you have to sell it. I get it. I won't be buying it,
I
but
will
I
no
hope
longer
that
be
you
joining an
succeed.
MLM.
Yeah. Oh my God. MLMs generally. That's what they're called, right? MLMs.
Yes, MLMs. Yeah.
What does
Did
it
you ever
stand
watch
for?
multi-level marketing? Did you ever
Oh,
watch the LuLaRoe documentary on Amazon?
no.
Oh my God, that's your homework. It's so fucking wild. It's about
Okay.
the leggings company that like everybody was obsessed with, like, I
Hmm.
don't know, 6 years ago. It was like a very, listen, LuLaRoe was like the most Iowa thing ever. Like
Oh, okay.
I knew like 7 people who distributed it in like my hometown alone,
Right.
of 5,000 people.
I
Okay,
love that
well,
segment. You have to keep that segment going. Your last one, what was it? Um, the one about Travis Kelsey.
yeah, he looks
I
like Kronk.
And then you put the audio. I like you can cut this, but I like actively like cackled in the middle of the gym. Incredible.
I just was like,
Incredible.
who does he look like? Like, who does he remind me of?
Yeah.
And I just was like, God, all I can think of is that fucker from a person group.
Person
Like,
group.
that's really all he reminds me of.
That's
Okay. Okay. Well, Gia, thank you so much for joining. This has been absolutely lovely. If you want to follow Gia, you can find her on Instagram. She is at Gia_Dougherty,
hell
and
yeah,
then
brother.
at body acceptance underscore project. And then her website is www.bodyacceptanceproj.com.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, Gia.
Thank you for
I love
having
you
me,
so much.
darling. I love you
You're the
so, so
best.
much.